And the other thing is also the understanding is even less on the issue of North Korea, because in the dossier you've written about the new Cold War in Northeast Asia. You explain that North Korea is presented as a bogeyman. And just to quote you, actually, you say North Korea has often been touted as the reason for increased militarization. This has always been a fig leaf for US containment strategies. And then you go on to say the two main justifications for increased US and allied military capabilities in Northeast Asia are the threat posed by North Korea and the need to defend Taiwan. Yeah, and as I said, I just don't think North Korea is a country that is very well understood in the global north. For example, there's very widespread perception that the people of North Korea are just mindless drones. So I just wondered if you could explain what is really going on here. Why is the US so focused on North Korea? And could you also speak to any misconceptions that you think there are about this issue as well?
Sure. I think like there's a great book written by the director of Los Alamos laboratories, which is like they develop nuclear weapons basically. And his name was Hecker, and he wrote this book named Hinge Points. And what he does is he basically details the diplomatic trajectory between North Korea and the United States. And, this is not like a pro-North Korean person, right? He's like literally a nuclear scientist for the United States. He's like a nuclear expert. He's like the director of one of the main labs for this stuff. And, he basically says, in effect, that it's the United States that has derailed the peace process again and again, either because it goes against kind of like its ideology, or because it's not been able to get it together because of various like political factions or whatnot at different moments. But in effect, the argument that he makes is that North Korea has been pursuing peace and normalization with the United States ever since like the 1990s. Right? Ever since like the mid-90s, has been pursuing it. Of course, it's not been pursuing it in the way that the United States is used to, which is being like, hey, look, I'll do whatever you want me to do. What do you want me to do? I'll do it all so that you could be my friend. For North Korea, it's not like that, right? North Korea is like, look, we want to normalize relations with the biggest bully in the world, the strongest, biggest bully in the world that is like suffocating us. We want to be friends with. Why? Because they see that the region is changing, right? The region is changing, right? South Korea and China are like normalizing relations. Like this is in the 90s, right? They're seeing all these things changing around them. China is normalizing relations with the US, all these things. And to some degree, the collapse of the Soviet Union, North Korea starts to see that it's like becoming isolated. And despite the fact that the United States basically had a scorched earth policy in North Korea, despite the fact that it basically razed most of its cities down to the ground. Despite all that, like to some degree, like North Korea like saw the writing on the walls. It says like, yeah, we can't just be the lone person that's standing up to the United States. But they wanted to do it from a position of strength, right? And what was a position of strength? It was the notion of a dual track approach, right? One, it's like diplomacy and negotiations. And when that breaks down, then move into like developing your nuclear weapons, right? When you reach a certain level of development in your nuclear weapons, go back to the diplomatic track. And, if the US just kept going on the diplomatic track, there would have been a peace treaty. North Korea would not be where it is today. The relationship would not be what it is today. But if you look at the historical record, again and again and again, it was the United States that basically either when presidents changed, decided to change their approach to North Korea, or a lot of these like neocons that advised them would either mislead them to think to be very much influenced by their worldview, not by objective facts about North Korea. And yeah, they would like derail the process again and again. So I think like one big misconception is this notion that North Korea has never wanted peace and has only wanted nukes. It's absurd. Like what country just wants nukes? It's like you could either like have no need for nukes, or you could just be holding on to this gun and be afraid. And it's like, it's a completely ridiculous notion, right? It's like absurd. It blows the mind that people, and of course, how do you justify? You just justify by painting North Korean leadership as being like bizarre and like, whatever, like inscrutable and all these things. But they're nothing like that. In fact, they're very good at diplomacy. Otherwise, they would not have survived under the thumb of the United States for like nearly 70 years, 70, 80 years. So I think like there was Bruce Cummings, I think said something where along the lines of like how the news just has like short-term memory, right? Nobody actually looks at the history of the diplomatic process with North Korea, because if somebody did, it's just the facts are all there. It's not even opinion. But the moment where the processes have broken down, I put in great detail, which, that's what Hecker calls the hinge points, right? At the hinge points, the United States made the bad choice. And then it just brought us to North Korea developing more and more and more and more nuclear weapons. And of course, I think a lot of the world wants North Korea to like get rid of its nukes, right? But that's also absurd, right? Why would you put down your gun when you have like everybody pointing a gun at you? Like, why would you denuclearize the weakest countries when the biggest countries can like reduce their stockpile and still have plenty of weapons to blow you up like many times over? It's completely ridiculous.